Dreams Life podcast. Yeah. We're jamming. It's a Friday afternoon. Hey, it's a full moon tomorrow, so the energy's flowing, you know? The energy is flowing. I don't know what it is about full moons, new moons. You ever think about that? Full moons and new moons, really high energy periods. And, you know, we're 70-some% water, and the moon pulls on the ocean, creates those tides. I think it affects the body too. So talking about full moon, what about living a full life? That's what I want to look at today, living a full life. And I'm actually opening it up for calls. And if you would like to call in, if you hear something that you find interesting and you want to call in, you're welcome to do that. If you're looking from Quora, the link from Quora, then the information's on the Quora page. For those of you on the other four services that we're streaming on, I'm going to give you a phone number. It's 760-826-3072. I'll give that again. So that's the number to call in. And I really wanted to tackle this one, living a full life, because sometimes it takes a whole existence till a person has this experience later in life where they say, you know, I wish I would have known this or that. And so why not just cut to the chase and get to it now and talk about what does it mean to live a full life? I think sometimes we don't even know that we're missing out until we have some sort of awakening. That's a very common dilemma, life dilemma. Sometimes you need to awaken before you discover that there's more to life. So awakening is important, but I want to read to you a couple quotes that I think are very insightful on living a full life. Enjoy the little things in life. Enjoy the little things. For one day, you may look back and realize that they were the big things. That's pretty powerful. Enjoy the little things in life. I really think that comes down to a high level of consciousness, doesn't it? If you were on a trip overseas for years and you were away from your loved ones, your family, those people that are special in your life, that special town that you were born and raised in, and let's say you were in a tough situation and you came back, you would be so attuned. Let's say you were a young guy who went into military service or something like that, and it was just hell overseas. And then you come back and there's your mom, and she's making breakfast like she always has. But before, when you were there, you just didn't see it like you're seeing it now. Why is that? You just didn't appreciate it like you're appreciating it now. Why is that? The scents. Oh, those familiar scents that are, you know, the smell of fresh baked muffins or her famous whatever it is dish. Now it's all just coming together. And I would suggest to you that nothing has changed except for your perspective and your level of consciousness. That's why we need to enjoy the little things in life. That requires a higher level of consciousness, of conscious awareness. I've often thought of this when it comes to traveling and trips. Have you ever noticed that when you go on a trip, how cool it is to visit new places? And I've oftentimes thought of that. I thought of, why can't my own neighborhood be like my vacation? So when you go on these vacations, what happens? Normally, you know, you're very into what you're doing. You go into town, you know, you kind of maybe research breakfast places or whatever it is, or the best coffee place in town. You go in and your senses are alive. You walk in and you just smell that some of these coffee places, you know, these smaller coffee shops, they roast their own beans, and you can just smell the roaster going. And you look around and you look at all the people in there. There's an old couple sitting on the couch, and you know, you're just making contact with everyone. You feel so alive. And then you wonder, why is my town so boring? Is it really boring? Aren't there people who come into your town from another town? And don't they experience the same thing? I would suggest to you that it's not so much the place that is special, but that the level of consciousness on a vacation, that that is with you at that moment is what makes it so magical. Because life is really very, very magical when you are awakened. And that's why that quote from Robert Brialt, enjoy the little things in life, is so powerful. Because why does he say little? It's not even that they're little, but when you wake up to the quote unquote little things, you find out they were pretty big. Like you go, okay, so you're on vacation, you go into town, you walk into that coffee shop, you smell the beans roasting, you see the older couple, maybe you talk to the guy, and you just connect. I don't know what it is. You have some common background, whatever, your dad and his dad, whatever, I don't know what it is, but you just have this great conversation and you walk away thinking, man, that guy was great. And then you get that coffee. Oh, this is so good. And then, maybe you get that breakfast and they have something really special there. But the fact is you're awakened to the moment, to life in the moment. And that's how you live a full life, living a full life is to update your consciousness, your conscious awareness to a higher level. Updating your consciousness to a higher level. That's how, as Streams of Light podcast, as being live right now on all these 4 live streams, we focus on a higher level of consciousness. And that's the goal with Streams of Light. So as we are on those vacations and we have that higher level of consciousness, we learn to awaken to the moment, because it's the little things in life that are really the big things in life. Okay, I got a call on the line, and I don't even know if this is a personal call, if this is a call into the podcast. What should I do? Should I take this call? Is this caller ready to go live with Streams of Light podcast? That's the question I have. Maybe we should do it. What do you think? Should we do it? Should we go live? We're going live. Streams of Light podcast. Who do I have on the line?
Hi, hey, this is Jill.
Hi, Jill. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. Good, thank you.
It's good to hear from you. So today we're talking about living the full life. And I quoted Robert Brialt, and he said, enjoy the little things in life, for one day you may look back and realize that they were the big things. What do you think about that?
Well, I think most of us know on some level that there's so much truth in that statement. And for myself, I feel like becoming more and more awake really just brings me back to that place where it is about gratitude, about getting up every day and having your health and being able to take care of yourself and being able to take care of others around you. Those are all things that are little things. Many, many times we take for granted.
Yes.
And I just feel like those are some of the things that we need to kind of get back to some of the basics on.
I agree, because it seems to me like health is, as far as I'm concerned, whenever someone goes through a health crisis, health seems to be the first thing that we realize that we've taken for granted.
Absolutely.
You take for granted that you're living pain-free, that you don't have aches and pains, especially when you have the aches and pains. You think, whoa, I had it so good. What was I thinking? And yeah, it's amazing. Health is that one thing that's overlooked. And I love what you said about gratitude. It just raises your vibration, and that brings you into a whole new state of being and appreciation. And gratitude is a powerful, powerful thing in our lives, I think. You still with me?
Oh, hey, Chris. Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just talking about how gratitude is a super, super high vibration, and it just lifts us out sometimes of, depression and despair. That's something that, I posted when I posted about doing this podcast on living a full life. One of the things I posted was, how do we deal with depression and despair, and despair? And it seems to me that gratitude is one of the best recipes to kind of lift yourself out of depression.
Chris, I would like to ask you a couple of questions. What are your tips on finding gratitude and defining gratitude.
Okay, that's a great question because, you know, honestly, gratitude is one of those words we're hearing a lot more, with the whole East meets West, movement just covering the globe and really the United States, and all the yoga classes and those things are great. But I have to admit that gratitude has become a big buzzword. And, what does it mean to be grateful? I think, first of all, you have to consider, uh, you know, again, we have to go back to that higher level of consciousness and think about count, the old saying, from like our parents or our grandparents was count your blessings. So there needs to be a cognitive recognition of things in our life that are worthy and, praiseworthy. So, sometimes like we talked about, sometimes some of the given things are like, things that are always good that we're not even aware that they're, like our health. And, if we're younger, it's our parents and those in our family who help us. Or maybe if we're a little bit older, it's our children and maybe even grandchildren. So one thing I think that I do, gratitude is something that is right in front of us, yet, oftentimes we don't reflect on it until it comes time for like Thanksgiving. And then when someone says, hey, say the Thanksgiving prayer, and then we go, oh, okay. And then we think about it, we think, well, let's see, what am I thankful for? The food and this and that. But really, there are many people now who start off the day. One of my yoga teachers does this. She starts off the day every day with a gratitude practice. So she sits down and takes a mental inventory and she thinks, what am I grateful for today? And she tries to think of things that maybe she didn't think of the day before, which I think is really powerful, because once you get down and you make the effort to have a cognitive reflection. So this is the answer to your question for, step one of gratitude, having a cognitive reflection of what is going on in your life in the sense of, in a positive way, and to actually be grateful. Now, when we talk about gratitude raising your vibration, I like the fact that you said, what define gratitude? I really believe it's more than just having a cognitive recognition of those things, but actually a heartfelt appreciation for them. So it's not so much just going through a mental inventory of what do I have to be thankful for? What do I have to be grateful for? But then it's actually resonating with those items and sort of ruminating in them to the point where, for example, let's say you think of like your kids, for example, and you think of your children, you think of the special qualities and what they've meant in your life and how they've blessed you, and maybe even how they've overcome certain challenges in their own life. These are the things. So, sometimes we're taught to avoid emotion, but really what we're learning now is thoughts have electrical, reactions in the brain, electrical impulses, and that emotions have create magnetic responses in our energetic field. So these emotions become magnetic moments that not only draw us into a higher place of vibration, but also we find that we begin to attract those things that we're feeling. So that's why I talk about sometimes the angry driver and how he attracts other angry drivers. If you've ever driven with someone who is ticked off all the time on the road, you notice why are these people pulling up and shaking their fist, at this guy or whatever. But like energy attracts like energy. So that's kind of how I would approach it in my own life.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Sure. So, anything else? Do you have any other thoughts? Okay, let me read another quote. Let me read. This one is from the famous Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, "All life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better." Jill, what do you think of that?
I completely agree. And I love how you bring some of these quotes in, especially along, they kind of tailor to the whole gratitude theme, finding gratitude, recognizing gratitude. And again, I think those two items just go hand in hand. Can you have one without the other?
That's a good question. What do you think?
I think that you can, but I think that most people probably have both and they may just not recognize that they do.
Right. I love the Ralph Waldo quote because he looks at life as not that he doesn't look at it seriously, but he says all life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. It's like those scientists we've heard of, all the stories of, like, Thomas Edison, who, before he had finally succeeded, with whatever it was, the light bulb or whatever, he had like with every, 99 attempts and failures, then there's one success. And I love how Emerson, brings out this, life is like an experiment, and it kind of have fun with it. The more you do, the better. And so I love that, because I feel like sometimes in this day and age, we get so serious with, life becomes such a chore because we dread things. It's too serious. And so when we take life, it's like anything. When you're around someone who takes themselves too seriously, it's kind of like, I don't even want to be around this person anymore. Right? When you take things too seriously, it's not the best energetic vibration, is it?
Nope, that's correct.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to close with before we move on, Jill?
No, thank you, Chris. Your insight is always appreciated.
Okay. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. So life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. And then an unknown author for the next quote: life is a game. Play it. Life is a challenge. Meet it. Life is an opportunity. Catch it. So that is just, again, it kind of touches on what Emerson said. So first of all, if you want to live a full life, you have to engage in it. That's one thing that I think is super important to realize. If you're sitting in the stands at a football game, if you're just sitting there in the stands, you can be a cheerleader, but you can't be a player from the stands. Now, can you? So sometime, what is required in life is what? We got to put on the uniform and get on the field and get in the game. There's not really many successful, gratified people with life that have not put on the uniform and got on the playing field. You wouldn't expect someone to have any good success, not only if they didn't put on their uniform, but you got to go to practice. You got to do the workouts. You got to lift. You got to do the calisthenics. These are the things that get you ready for game day. So life is a game. Play it. Life is a challenge. Meet it. And that's another big one. And I've learned this. This is a pattern that many of us who've had some big struggles can have, a challenge with and triggers with, is when you come into those challenges, if you've had other challenges before where you've experienced pain, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who are going to be able to relate to this one. If you've had things in your life happen that have caused pain, be it loss or illness or whatever it might be, it could be easier for you to think, I'm not going to meet this challenge. I'm going to retreat. But really, there's no path when it comes, when you're thinking about retreating, there's really no path when you're going to retreat. The only way to live a full life is not only to get in the game and get your uniform on and get on the field. The only other thing to do is to meet that challenge. I remember I did play football when I was a kid. And one of the things that happened was we had a game that was just before a championship game. It was pretty important. And they had put their A players in, and I, at times I was on the field and at times not, and they had put me back in on a really critical moment. I was playing, went to Torrey Pines High School, and I was playing for the junior football league, before the high school level. We were the Eagles, and we got in the field. I got on the field in this play, and it was third down and long for the other team, and I was a defensive back, so I was covering the passer. And guy goes out in a post pattern, and receiver's running down the field, and the quarterback threw the ball very high. Matter of fact, so high, it was just too high for the receiver. And I had one choice right there. I had the choice of just doing nothing and letting it go, or getting the ball and meeting that challenge, taking the chance, because, they could still, on fourth down, they could still kick a field goal, or they could still go for it on fourth down. So I had to meet the challenge in that moment. And so what I did was maybe a little bit risky, but I met the challenge and I went up for that ball and I pulled it down for an interception. But the thing is, and I couldn't believe it, but at that moment, the players were excited. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I had to make a split-second decision. I had to meet life where it was at. I had to follow my intuition and follow my heart. Sometimes when you sit down and cognitively think about what should I do in this situation, it's okay to do that, to weigh out all the costs and to look at things from that perspective. But one of the things that you can do is just follow your heart in those situations. And I've found that you can count the cost, but when all is said and done, no matter what your mind tells you, there's an intelligence of the heart. And they know, and they actually know that now scientifically, that there is an actual intelligence of the heart, that the heart actually responds. We know this before things happen. It seems to almost pick up on it in the scientific world. And there's experiments out there that prove that. But so follow the heart and meet the challenges, get on the field and play the game. And then life is an opportunity. And that's one that I really like that, because when you look at life as an opportunity, you almost look at, that's speaking to the business person, isn't it? Like for the investor, life is an opportunity, capture it. And I like that. There's been many spiritual sages who have picked up on that mentality. The Christ told a story about that. He said there was 3 guys and they all were given something in their life. They were all given some money, talents. Back in the day, I think that was the Greek dollar, so to speak, or the Greek currency. They were all given talents. And it's kind of funny, though, that currency word could be translated, we're all giving things in our life, right? Talents, abilities in our life. But 3 people were given talents, and what happened? One guy went out and just totally went for it, invested, and he scored big time. Took a risk, but he scored. Another guy, not so much, but he got something for his investment. And then the other guy, with what he was given, he just went and buried it in the field. He was afraid. He didn't want to lose it, you see, because it was given to him by his master, and he was afraid to lose this financial investment. So he didn't do anything. And at the end of the day, when this business owner came back to these 3 individuals, he said, hey, let's do the accounting. What do you got here? And the first guy said, well, I did this and that. Oh, great. Did a good job. Perfect. Second guy, not as good, but still, hey, great. Good. Third guy who buried it said, I knew you were a tough guy, and that you like to make money in areas where maybe you're not even directly working, and you're a big time investor. And really, he said, honestly, I was afraid to lose your money. So I'm just going to give it back to you, because the last thing I wanted to do was let you down. And the master was like, hey, wait a second. You're just going to give me back that initial chunk of change I gave you without any return? He goes, you should have at least taken it to the bank and got like 1 or 2%. The moral of the story is we have to step out of our shell and live life. Take risks. The great author C.S. Lewis said at the end of his life, after he lost his wife, he said to his university students, hey, knowing that loving can lead you down a road of pain when loss comes, should we do it? Knowing what we know, if we love, we will oftentimes suffer loss. Should we do it? And the answer was most definitely yes, because we got to get in the game. We got to live life. So living a full life. And now I've discovered on my own path, just a couple tips and pointers from my own experience. I've discovered on my own path that some of the things that have really improved my life to live a full life and to wake up from what I would call ego consciousness into universal consciousness. This is very important. Going from ego consciousness, self, small self, false self, as some writers would call it, to universal consciousness. This is huge. We need to get out of our own little world. When we were young and we were a baby and we were throwing a fit and it was all about us, well, that was forgivable. But those days have passed. We've grown up now, and now is the time for us to wake up to the world around us. Just like I said in the beginning, higher level of consciousness, walking into that coffee shop, there's people all around. And you have something to give them, but they have something to give you. So it's waking up from egocentric consciousness to that higher level, universal consciousness. How do we do that? There's many different paths that different people have engaged in their own life and their own spiritual path to awaken to the universal higher self, that universal consciousness, or even what we sometimes call the universal, the unitive field, which is where we know everything's connected and we're working in that. In other words, the guy in the coffee shop who's sitting there in a different town, we walk in and we see him, and when you get in this higher state of vibration, you actually know you're connected. You don't just see him as a different person. Matter of fact, what I would suggest to you is, and this is going to seem really crazy to some of you who are more, who glory in being grounded and maybe haven't experienced this universal consciousness, this universal field, this unitive field as much, but when you walk into that coffee shop in a higher state of consciousness, you can tap that person. I don't mean physically, but etherically or quantum field-ishly. We are all connected. There is this unitive field. So how do you get there? That's a big question. In my life, reading books was enjoyable and it taught me many different paths. Unfortunately, reading about the paths is like sitting in the stands of a sports game and not putting the uniform on and getting in the game. I practiced early in my spiritual path, Christianity, what I would call true Christianity, the love Christianity and the adoration, worship part of Christianity. That was good for me. That propelled me on the path. And now, later in my life, I've accelerated even faster from my own self-assessment through the yogic path. And in the yogic path, and now meditation has been huge for me. As I mentioned on the previous podcast, pretty much every faith family practices meditation. Pretty much every path does. So although the methods may differ, the results typically lead you to the same end. So meditation has been extremely helpful for me. And then what I would call the yoga asanas have really helped me as well. But those aren't just so much yoga classes, although I enjoy my yoga classes, but it is the conscious awareness and is the moving of energy in the process of the asanas that has helped me to awaken even further. What are some of the telltale signs that you're progressing in this path? One of the things that I started to notice was I seemed to be more energetic in general, didn't seem to be so tied to my body and the requests of the body, and didn't seem to be so tied down to the mental monkey thing that goes on oftentimes in our minds, right? So some of the signs that you're progressing in the path of contemplation up towards universal consciousness is you don't see yourself necessarily as the center of the universe in a selfish sense, although you might see yourself as the center in the divine consciousness as the Atman or Christ in me kind of thing. But really, that is not a selfish state of being, a lower vibrational, that's a higher vibrational. So you're waking up from ego consciousness, you're realizing, hey, it's not all about me. I'm not the center of the universe. Not everyone is against me. I'm not simply the one who is the victim of all these other people. This is really, really important to realize this. So as we're growing in this path, we're finding that we are awakening to the higher level of consciousness, the awareness of other people, the awareness of the unitive field. And we're not tied down to the body so much. As I said, appetite is no longer our taskmaster. We find ourselves having an unusual, uncanny sort of control over the body. As we progress on this path, we start to become masters of our own selves. That's, the beginning stages of it. To be a master of the body. This, I believe, starts with the breath. That's why so many traditions in the contemplative path focus on the breath. The breath is huge in the contemplative path, on the spiritual path. It's the person who masters their own breath that then begins to control the nervous system and begins to pull energy out of those necessary functions. The heart pump takes up so much energy. And when you go deep into contemplation, deep into meditation, what begins to happen? The breath begins to subside through pranayama, and then the heart slows down. And all that energy that was being used for eyes, ears, heart, thoughts, etc., begins to get pulled into the cervical spine and the cranium, becomes a powerful magnet. All that energy from the rest of the body gets drawn into those higher vortices, those higher energetic centers, where we begin to experience this higher level of consciousness. I do believe that there's other ways to do it, but this has been the way that I've found most effective. And it's actually been really liberating for me. I don't talk too much about the details of my own spiritual life, but in my path of Kriya Yoga, I didn't understand in the beginning why so many people on that path would, for example, take flowers from the gardens or whatever and lay them on the altar in front of pictures of the teachers of their path. And I didn't quite understand that. And coming from a Western mindset, it seemed a little bit, I don't know, we were taught you just don't do stuff like that, right? They talked about, hey, that's worshiping, man or false gods or whatever. But I really began to realize, it's like in life, like if someone came to you and they said, look, I can see you're in a tough spot and financially you just need some help right now. If someone came alongside you and helped you through that rough spot, and then when you got back on your feet, of course, you pay them back and so on and so forth, I could see how, in that situation, we would be really, really appreciative, right? For someone who carried us through a difficult time. It's not too far off from that. When we learn these higher methods of ascension in our own spiritual path, gratitude, as Jill brought up, what is gratitude? We get this incredible high vibrational gratitude that rises up from within our being. Now I understand why all these people pick these flowers and put them down. It's not so much like to worship a man or a woman or anything like that. It's out of gratitude, because before maybe they were blind in certain areas and now they're seeing. Before they were weak, but now they're strong. And this is what the teachers bring to us. They bring to us liberty. They bring to us conscious awareness that really, it's not really so much theirs to give. It's just something that they discovered. And then they passed along to us the path. And that's what happened in my life. As I wanted to go deeper, I knew there was more. I just knew there was more. And so I delved deeper into spirituality. I delved deeper into the yogic path. I stopped looking at yoga as just a class you take on the weekends or, doing some high lunges. And I really looked into what is it about. And as I began to delve into it deeper, not only just in the theory of it, but in the actual practice of it, I found that not only was my body starting to change, but my mind, my emotions. I shared with a friend the other day, I said, yeah, I really want to just do my nightly meditation. And it was like, oh, okay, really? And as I was talking about it, I realized what I wanted to tell this person was that, and it's not like I'm a monster if I don't do it, but what I realized a long time ago was that when I did my meditations and I controlled my breath, it did something to me physiologically. Even in my organs, I don't know what was going on before. I think my diet wasn't as good, but it seemed like, if I was a little hungry, I would get low blood sugar, and then I would get what? I'd get a little irritable, right? We all get that, and you see it with children, when they're hungry or tired. But I've just noticed that I am much more even tempered since I engaged on this path. And so it's not so much that I do it to be religious or because, I've got to do it because God won't be happy or the saints or the gurus or anything like that. No, I do it because it's freedom for me. I do it because it's not only freedom for me, but I can become then a gift to others. Again, it's coming out of that shell of just the ego and the egocentric consciousness into that higher state of universal consciousness, God consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it, whatever name you put on it, doesn't really matter. If you've tasted it, then you know what I'm talking about. And so one of the things that I was thinking about ending with today is, and I talked to some of my friends on Quora about this the other day when, I get a lot of folks who find me in a difficult time and they're looking for comfort and support. And I wanted to pull up a quote that I put on my Quora space the other day because, talking to a lot of these people who are going through difficult times, I realized that this is one of my purposes in life, is to give out words of encouragement for people who are going through a rough time. People find me. At one point in time, I accepted this is the way it is. All my friends, whenever they've gone through a rough time, they just call me and they just say, hey, I knew I could call you. So this is, something that I work in. I've accepted this is something that apparently I was born to do. So I put this post in my space and it said, the universe is sending you a direct reminder that you're on the right path. You're doing well. You are loved. You are supported. Everything will work out. And I thought about that. I thought, you are loved. And it's not that it didn't resonate with me, but I realized that it didn't really evoke emotion in me because it's just something I know now. I know I'm loved. But I thought about that and I thought, how do I know I'm loved? Well, first of all, I saturate myself daily, twice daily, in whatever you could call it love, you could call it divine consciousness, you could call it spirit, you could call it Kundalini Shakti, you could call it whatever you want, bliss body. But I realized that the gift that I've been given on the path that I'm on is to crack that little divine kernel that's been placed within all of us as human beings. All of us have this little seed, so to speak, within us. The Christ called it the seed of faith, and look at what a big tree it grows into. In the East, they call it the Om, the seed sound, the sound of the divine. It's called so many different things, the kingdom of God, rivers of living water, bread that comes down from heaven, but it's there. And what I realized was I was learning, every seed has kind of like that little husk, that little shell on the outside, right? But inside that seed is the key to life, isn't it? Inside every seed is a diagram, is a genetic diagram for a new thing. And so I learned a while back how to crack that seed. And I do it through the breath and I do it through the esoteric yogic practices that I've been given. But man, and I was doing it before I found that path. I was doing it in bhakti and worship and adoration, divine adoration. And so there's not just one way to doing it, but the important thing is to do it and to just saturate in it. Because once you do that, you not only know that you're loved, you know that not only I am loved, but I am love. You realize that not only are you the object of love, divine love, the love of the universe, however you want to call it, Gaia's love, your spiritual teacher's love, whatever, your parent, it doesn't have to be a spiritual path. We all need love. We all are love. And once I found how to crack that seed within me daily at will, as often as you want, take a drink from that well, it's been said. So once I learned how to crack that, I realized, man, this is the water that leads to everlasting life. This is the eternal. This is the one. This is it. This is the essence, the divinity. And I don't think it was until I really learned how to do that and did it on a regular basis that I was able to then begin to really, really express that same love. Because one of the things I've discovered is for the person who's saying, I haven't been able to find love. I've been looking for love. Maybe they want a relationship. It might be other things they want, not just love. It might be companionship, a job, whatever. But what I've found is, particularly in the category of love, the best way to receive love is to not focus on the receiving of it. The best way to receive love is actually to focus on loving. And when Jill had called earlier and she said, what is gratitude? And we talked about how it is not only a mental inventory of what we can be grateful for, but then it's the heart appreciation and it's the emotion, the upwelling of emotion. Love as well, just like gratitude, propels us to a higher state of consciousness, a higher vibrational state, really. And I know to some people, when you say like higher vibrational state, it sounds kind of funny. In the old days, we called it new age mumbo jumbo or whatever. But the truth is, we really, all of our cells, everything that's within us as far as the matter is energy, and it's all vibrating. And so all matter is energy and all energy is vibration. And really all vibration is sound, because everything that's moving is making sound. So it's really important that we get off our butts. It's really important that we raise our own vibration by cracking that seed that's within us daily. Because then when we find ourselves rising up into this new state, this new reality, so to speak, and it's a different world. It's sometimes called 5D. It's sometimes called nirvana or the kingdom of heaven. But we crack that seed within us and it brings us into this higher vibrational state. That's how I live the full life. You might live it in a number of different ways. It's not that my way is right and your way is wrong. The point is, we're all waking up in this country, in this world. And the revolution that's gone on in technology and communications and even finance and decentralized finance is bringing us in to a real new age where we're awakening to who we are and what we could do and what the potential is. Thank you so much for taking time out to join me. Streams of Light podcast, we appreciate your support as far as just liking the podcast and making a comment. We're not looking to make millions of dollars. We're just looking to find common friends on this path that we're on, this path of ascension, this path of awakening and higher consciousness. So thank you so much for joining me today. And make sure you subscribe and set your alerts, and we'll see you next time around on Streams of Light podcast. I'm Chris Anthony. Have a great, great day.